Okay, we should be live now. Today we're going to go over the collective unconscious. I have a good video from Eternalized. I think that's how you say it. I would assume that's how you say it. And then I have a few other videos pulled up just in case we get through it very fast, but this is 15 minutes and it takes me a while to get through even a 10-minute video, so no promises. But yeah, just want to get back to consistently streaming, consistently coming on here because this is just fun. It really is. That's the main reason I do it. It's just like I don't know, it's just enjoyable. It's a nice way to get out my thoughts and explain things. And I don't know, I feel like I learned just as much as everyone that's here. I feel like it allows me to say things that I otherwise wouldn't have to say. It allows me to think in a different way. And that's really the key to any sort of intelligence. There's something Osho said I found very true. But if intelligence meant the person was old, like if just years and years and years of experience made somebody smart, then there'd be a lot of geniuses in nursing homes. But it's not the case. I'm sure you all know somebody that's old that's very dumb. It's the introspection. It's the ability to reflect. It's the ability to repackage. It's the ability to see commonalities in one thing and see it in another thing. See the same metaphor. See the same pattern play out. And interestingly enough, this is a lot of Jung's message. Jung didn't really give you like a a step-by-step checklist, but he gave you a framework that kind of fits the human psyche, which I find much more accurate and much more compelling than Freud. But
Refuse to admit is that we are dependent upon powers that are beyond our control.
the one thing we refuse to admit that we are dependent upon powers that are beyond our control. Okay, so I'm guessing, I don't know the exact context of this, but essentially, think of ideas that we hold and we don't know where they come from. Like think about the American dream, the manifest destiny, the white picket fence, the hero, what a good soldier is, what a good father is. Like these are all things that we have our own unique definition of, but it's kind of the same. Like it really coincides in the same way for different people. And this is something that Jung observed not just with Western society, but he also visited various other places in the world and saw that there are some sort of symbols, there are some sort of ideas and conceptions that are carried out through people regardless of where they come from. And whether you think that's some like just genetic thing that is just if you go back far enough, everyone has it, or if you think it's a spiritual thing, like that's where it kind of gets into a gray area and that's where there's kind of discussion, but there are universal themes. Like think about how many people are afraid of snakes, think about how many people are afraid of spiders. Why is that? Most spiders aren't dangerous. Why are we also deathly afraid of daddy long legs even though they can't really bite us? It's because there's like an ingrained survival instinct from the past.
One of Carl Jung's most well-known and controversial concept is the collective unconscious.
I wouldn't say it's controversial. I would say it's kind of dismissed because there's all sorts of these like ideas that float around like we hear the word like generational trauma, stuff like that. That's collective unconscious. So like the thing about Jung is he's not celebrated nearly as much and he's kind of dismissed because he kind of went the path of the mystic versus the path of a psychologist. And that's really analogous to his split from Freud early on. Freud wanted him to continue all his theories and really build upon everything that he was working towards. But essentially, Jung wanted to take his own path.
Unconscious, the aspect of the unconscious mind which manifests inherited, universal themes which run through all human life. As is described in his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung experienced exceedingly vivid dreams throughout.
This is a very good book to read too if you haven't read anything by Jung. Um, this is one of the places to start. This, Man and His Symbols, and The Undiscovered Self are probably the top three books I would say to read if you haven't read anything by him. Not to say that you wouldn't be able to understand his other works, but Jung is somebody that you kind of get breadcrumbs from. Like you read it, you pick up one thing, and then you're like, "Oh, that was an interesting idea, but I really didn't get what you're saying." And then you read it again, and then again, and then again, and you see him reference these ideas time and time again, and it just clicks. That's really how I understand Jung. It's if you understand poetry, if you understand symbolism, then you understand Jung. But if you don't understand those things, it's going to be very difficult to parse through it. And then I would suggest to read these works first because it's just going to click. Honestly, a lot of the reason why I can read poetry, like why I can read Shakespeare, I don't really have to read the side with the notes, is because I understand Jung so much.
throughout his life, the first one starting at the age of 3, where he encountered the so-called man-eater, a giant cyclops sitting on a golden throne with a single eye gazing upwards, symbolizing a ritual phallus. Jung would think of this subterranean god not to be named as the underground counterpart and dark side of Lord Jesus, a frightful revelation which had been accorded to him without him seeking it. This haunted him for years and was his initiation into the realm of darkness. There is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection.
Okay. So this is talking about the dualistic nature of life. So in general, how do we know the concept of light? It's because we know darkness. Without, it being nighttime, you can't see your what's it called? Your front porch light. Like it doesn't become bright until it's nighttime. And in essence, like everything comes from that. In essence, everything is derived from that. So like every ability you have to experience happiness comes from your ability to experience sadness as well. So like think if you won the lottery for the rest of your life, would it mean anything? It would mean something the first time, but the 1,000th time you'd be like, what's more money gonna do? I feel empty. I feel hollow. I don't have anywhere to spend it. The thrill is gone. And you might think it's a good thing, like, like the idea of living forever, like, wow, it would be a nice thing to live forever, but in essence, you wouldn't have to do anything because there's be no urgency. There would be no reason to get out of bed because you're gonna live for another 1,000 years, so you could just do it in that time. And it's like there's a certain level of necessity that needs to be pushed forth for anything to happen. What's up, Zachariah? How's everything? I feel like I haven't seen you.
As is
I've been good, just
characteristic of
chilling.
Jung's life, he stumbled upon the idea of the collective unconscious after a dream. In the dream, Jung found himself in the upper floor of a house which he did not know, but which seemed to be his house. The salon was surrounded by fine old furniture and paintings. He descended the stairs to the ground floor, and everything was much older, with medieval furnishing. Here he came upon a heavy door and opened it, discovering a stone stairway that led down into a cellar. Descending, he entered a room from Roman times. There was a stone slab on the floor, which lifted as he pulled a ring. He descended and entered a low cave with scattered bones and broken pottery, like remains of a primitive culture.
These are dreams that Jung described, but it might be daunting. Like when people think about dream analysis, they think it's something that you just instantly get. And there are some things that'll just click instantly, but these are dreams that Jung wrote down and studied for years. So just be aware of that. I feel like this is something I didn't understand when I was first reading it. I'm like that this guy's a genius. I feel like this guy is, something so far beyond anything I could even imagine. But the truth is, like he was reinterpreting these ideas years and years and years and seeing these symbols and seeing them reoccur. And then eventually it was just like, all right, that's it. Have you been live streaming? I feel like I haven't gotten the notifications. I've been live streaming like on and off. I feel like I keep getting busy with just nonsense. And like, I don't know, my sleep schedule's so like messed up right now that it's like difficult for me to be consistent. But I need to just like put my head down and just keep doing it because like, I don't know, this is just like the best thing I can do for myself right now. This is really the thing that I think I'm best at. So it's like it's really a shame for me to go and not live stream. It's really a shame for me to not share my ideas. I think I have a lot to say and it's just like I'm getting in my own way. It's very frustrating. But yeah, no, my analytics have been like really like YouTube changed the algorithm, so like my analytics are like adjusting. Um, I'm not one of those people that goes like, "Oh, I'm shadow banned on this, on that." Like, no, just the data that's being sent is just all over the place, and I think there's like gonna be a real change soon. It seems to me like everyone's kind of trying to figure out the algorithm and kind of trying to get their place again, and I feel like it's gonna settle down soon. So hopefully you start getting notifications again. But if you haven't been getting notifications, I don't like they've it's been a problem for years. So um yeah, my apologies if it's just not showing up. But I'll be streaming more, so don't worry.
He discovered 2 human skulls, then he awoke. Jung believes that this house was a kind of image of the psyche, the first floor representing consciousness, and the lower he went, the deeper into the unconscious he descended, and the more alien and the dark.
So if you're not familiar with the conscious unconscious, I'll explain it real quick. Um The conscious is the things we do on a daily basis. You know how to tie your shoes. You know what you need to know for your daily life, like going to work, like your path to work, like all sorts of these things that you just know. And then your unconscious is just everything you've ever observed that you don't need to remember. So in essence, every time you studied for an exam and just forgot it the next day, that information is somewhere buried in your unconscious and in some way influences your understanding, the way you conceptualize things, but you just can't remember it, and it pulls you in subtle directions. So it's essentially everything you've ever observed, every experience you already had is somewhere locked underneath that kind of sea of experience. What's up, El Divo? Yeah, I just double checked and turn on all notifications. I think that yeah. And I mean, like things will probably readjust. I haven't been like diligent about streaming every day though, so it could be that. Like I feel like every time I start to get like some momentum and like people are consistently coming, I stop streaming. I'm like, oh, I don't want to stream today. I'll just make an excuse, and it's stupid because I just kill all the progress. It's just really wasting like my time at that point because just like I don't know if I don't I feel like if I don't stream every day, if I don't put myself out there, how am I ever going to attract an audience? You know what I mean?
Darker the scene became, until he reached the deepest layer, the collective unconscious. These point to the foundations of cultural history, a history of successive layers of consciousness. Jung's investigation into the psyche spans over 60 years, most of which is gathered in his 20-volume set, The Collected Works. Throughout his life, Jung studied Gnosticism, alchemy, comparative religion, and mythology.
Jung like kind of broke down the building blocks of all of these religions and really was obsessed with like the more esoteric, more philosophical sides of religion. So he was extremely well versed in alchemy. He was extremely well versed in Gnosticism. In fact, one of his most notorious or infamous books, the Red Book, has like something straight out of a Gnostic text. And it doesn't read like anything Jung wrote. It reads like something Hermes Trismegistus would write or whatever Gnostic philosopher. I don't know their names, but
To acquire a wider knowledge of the origins and significance of mankind's collective unconscious. During his work, he encountered similar patterns.
essentially, Jung was obsessed with like archaic symbols that reappear to this day. So like think of the people that are like make YouTube videos and have entire channels dedicated to like every time a rapper or singer references like the Illuminati or like Freemasonry. Essentially, that's what Jung did with these archaic symbols, and he would analyze his patient's dreams, and then through these dreams, he would see these symbols occur, and he was interested to see why these symbols were occurring, what they meant for that specific patient, for that specific time, and indicating certain actions that they should take in order to heal their neuroses. Essentially, that's what he was doing.
Patterns in the dreams of patients suffering from schizophrenia,
Yeah.
and from his travels around the world observing the lives of primitive people. The universality of certain myths, which repeat themselves in strikingly similar detail in very different cultures and societies.
Think of like dragons, think of heroes, think of like things that just are known by a bunch of different civilizations that never had contact. Like the sheer number of pyramids across the world. And this is where like a lot of like the Atlantis or Kemet or like all those old kind of advanced civilizations that just disappeared one day. That's where all these come from because there's pyramids in South America, there's pyramids in Africa, there's pyramids basically all across the world. Some people even say North America that would cover like there's all sorts of these interesting parallels and like why are these symbols so apparent? Why is there an obelisk in Washington, D.C.? Like, what do these symbols mean and what do they mean to the individual in particular? Hero's journey stories. I mean, I guess you could say the dragons are that, but it's also like, I mean, think people are probably finding dinosaur bones and going like, oh, this might have been a dragon. Like, I feel like there's definitely something around that, or like kimono dragons are like a real thing, so who knows what kind of species were around? Like,
Gave him the idea of a soul springing universally within man. This was Jung's first inkling of a collective unconscious beneath the personal unconscious. Later, with increasing experience and on the basis of more reliable knowledge, Jung recognized them as forms of instinct, that is, as archetypes. But before explaining what archetypes are, we must distinguish the collective unconscious from the
okay,
personal unconscious.
so archetypes, broadly speaking, are images that we aspire to an ideal. So essentially, like the best way to describe this is like, do you ever really know a person, or do you just know what you view them to be? You kind of mythologize them in your head and you see them as that person. Like what you view a man to be, what you view a woman to be, like it's shaped by this archetypal image that kind of guides you. And it's formed by all your experiences, all the experiences of your family that raised you, all the experiences of, your culture and history and all sorts of these influences influence these archetypal images. And essentially what Jung claimed in the collective unconscious is that there are some symbols that are universal to everybody, and there's some symbols that are shared that we all understand what they mean. So just think of the collective unconscious like that. We can go like a monad. We can say that everyone is the same mind, everyone's derivative of the same intelligence, of the same creative energy or creative force. But you don't even have to attach like a deity to it. You don't even have to make it like a Gnostic. What is it? I can't remember the word, like plethora or something, some weird word that starts with a P, fluoroma or pluroma, something like that. But like essentially, just think about it like images that we all understand that we can't quite see where the origins come from, but we all just have our own definition and it all coincides with each other.
Unconscious. The collective unconscious does not owe its existence to personal experience, and consequently is not a personal acquisition, while the personal unconscious is made up essentially of contents which have at one time been conscious, but which have disappeared from consciousness through having been forgotten or repressed. The contents of the collective unconscious have never been in consciousness, and therefore have never been individually acquired, but owe their existence exclusively to heredity. Just as we have evolved biologically, we have also undergone a psychic evolution. The personal unconscious
Pleroma, there we go. I could not. Dude, there's so many words that I've just read that I don't know how to say, and that's like one of the worst feelings ever. I'm very smart. No, I'm actually very dumb. I'm like So I'm smart in some ways, but I'm dumb in other ways. So like I'm very good at like seeing patterns and I'm very good at applying them to other things. But I get very bored when it comes to history and dates. I get very bored when something's not stimulating. So like there's just certain tasks I'm not good at. I genuinely think everyone's smart in their own way, and I'm just very smart with symbols. They just click with me. It makes me sound smart because I can reference things and I can say like, oh, this philosopher said this said this. But like I'm just very good at categorizing things and applying them to different things. Like think of like a metaphor that is used time and time again. I can see it and I can see the pattern and I can see where it applies to other things.
consists for the most part of complexes, a term coined by Jung which represents a knot of unconscious feelings and beliefs that can be detected through one's behavior and may prevent us from achieving psychic wholeness. Jung found evidence for complexes while conducting word association
Think of like a Napoleon complex. Like that's a good example. Like somebody that's short that could never feel good about themselves, that has to outwardly portray themselves, that has to show a sign of strength, that has to like put themselves out there and really just show how like it's that sort of idea. There's the Oedipus complex. The Oedipus complex is actually very interesting. I think it kind of gets bastardized by how funny it is. The Oedipus complex, if you don't know what it is, there's a it's either called Oedipus Rex or Oedipus. I cannot remember, but essentially the Oedipus complex is you want to kill your father and marry your mother in more polite terms. But essentially, it's just like you want to grow up and outdo your father's accomplishments. In essence, kill that need to be reliant on a masculine figure. And this is particularly for men. It's not really for women. There are some elements for women, but and then you want to marry someone like your mother. You want to marry someone that has the same kind of characteristics. I think it's super compelling, and you can kind of see a lot of men that fail the Oedipus complex, that fail to do one of those two things, and it really cripples them. And it's very interesting if you like really start to apply these ideas to your own life. I got the feeling like reading the answer to Job by Jung. I had to look up the words every day. I need to. So the only I've seen the book, The Answer to Job, like several times in the store, but the only reason I didn't buy it is because I had never read the book of Job. But I'd be interested to see what Jung said about it. But I don't think he's gonna quite get it right because I think he's gonna be all in the weeds of these like there's almost something to this when you start getting into like the more esoteric philosophies, the more obscure and um occult's not even the right word, like secret society s things. Like people kind of like get paralyzed by like all of these like they're like obsessed with these things, and they think it's a lot deeper than it is, and they kind of get obsessed with only a philosophical interpretation, and like, oh, this is the one true way, this is the secret, this, like, and it's like it's very weird how like they pigeonhole themselves in that way. The Book of Job is really short. Yeah, yeah. No, I've read it now. I really enjoyed it. It reminded who did it remind me of? I'm trying to remember who's writing. When I was reading it, I was like, this is awesome. I really need to read more of the Bible. Like that's the last book that I really haven't studied. But the thing is, I know when I start studying it, it's going to be like years of my life that I don't get back. And not saying that's a bad thing. Like obviously it'll teach me a lot. But like I think it's just like I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't know if I'm ready to devote so much time to that book. But yeah, it'll happen someday.
Association tests in a psychiatric clinic. In the experiment, the patients must respond to a list of words as quickly as possible, saying the first thing that comes to mind in response to each word. After the test, Jung would note any unusual reactions, such as hesitations, slips of the tongue, or signs of emotion, which may hint at unconscious feelings or beliefs. He soon found out that it was the matter of intimate personal affairs that people were thinking of. Nevertheless, an inhibition came from the unconscious and hindered the expression in speech. On the other hand, the content of the collective unconscious is made up of archetypes, collectively inherited forms or patterns of behavior. A complex is associated with an archetype, such as a mother complex associated with a mother archetype. These primordial images reflect basic patterns common to us all, and which have existed universally since the dawn of time. They include archetypal events, such as birth, death, and the union of opposites, archetypal figures, such as the trickster, the hero, the wise old man, and archetypal motifs, such as
Okay, so like Jung was very hesitant to define different figures. So he mentioned several, and Jung kept them very broad because this is where Jung differs from a lot of other like intellectuals. Like Jung didn't necessarily even want to coin phrases to me because I feel like he wanted to make these ideas as unique to the individual. And that's really where you see the difference between Jung and a lot of other philosophers. A lot of Jung's students took like the archetype idea and were like, these are the 12 Jungian archetypes. Whereas Jung never coined these terms. He left it very broad, very open-ended because he recognized that everyone has their own each individual archetype that is very, very similar to everyone else's, but it's their own interpretation. Like think of how different sects of Christianity see the Bible. It's like that. Everyone has their own definition. Everyone sees things in their own way. Everyone conceptualizes things in their own way. Everyone has their own unique experiences that goes to tie these ideas together. That's essentially the Jungian method. That's essentially what I find so interesting and so compelling about it is because it's unique to everybody. Is that there's not really blanket terms. There's not really blanket diagnoses. While there's some necessity for it, it's not overly reliant. There's a very famous story with Freud. I laugh every time I tell it. I've told it so many times, but I'm going to tell it again. Freud was also very into dream analysis. You know, if you've ever read The Interpretation of Dreams, he kind of started this whole field, kind of started this whole scientific study of dreams and their importance. And a lot of Jung's work is credited to this. But essentially, he said that any phallic object, you can look that up. I'm not saying what that means. Any phallic object represented repressed homosexuality in your dreams. And essentially his daughter was like, "Wait, didn't you just tell me you had a dream about smoking a cigar?" And he goes, "Anna, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar." That's one of the biggest cope stories I've ever heard. But I love telling that story. But you see what it means because it kind of points out the flaw in Freud's method is that Freud really didn't mean that everything's absolute, but it's easier to go with that hypothesis. It's just much easier to apply that to people. It's much easier to treat people that way. What's much more difficult is to dive into their unconscious, is to dive into this person's experience and understand why certain symbols affect them in certain ways. Understand what this symbol means to this person at this time and place. And I really think this is what separates Jung and Freud, and this is why Jung was, to me, so much more interesting, to me, so much more compelling. If you've ever read Freud and if you've ever read Jung, there's a stark difference in style, and it's like night and day. It's just there's no comparison in my mind. But again, I have to read more Freud. Um, I don't like him as a person, so it's sometimes difficult to pick up the stuff he's reading and be like, well, this is interesting, this is good. I always feel like he's about to say something very profound, and then he stops short and just makes it the dumbest conclusion possible. But
As the
this is just my
creation
own
of the
personal reading.
world and the apocalypse. Jung did not attempt to provide an exhaustive and systematic list of all the archetypes, as some have attempted to. That would be a largely futile exercise.
Exactly, because there's infinite archetypes for the infinite amount of people. Everyone sees things in their own ways. It's just he had these large groupings that was much easier to understand. So like the hero archetype, the trickster archetype, the old man archetype, the animal archetype, the animus archetype. There's like there's more that he coined. I'm just saying them off the top of my head, but essentially like you can break down a lot of them into these ideals.
Since
And then there's a lot that are a combination of both these things because a lot of people like aren't necessarily morally black and white. A lot of people are morally gray. So it also goes into that as
archetypes
well.
can combine with each other, or one archetype may also appear in various distinct forms. He rather tells us that there are as many archetypes as there are typical situations in life. Endless repetition has engraved these experiences in our psychic constitution. Jung writes, however, that his years of observation and investigation of the unconscious gave way to recurring archetypal figures, the chief of them being the shadow, the wise old man, the child, the mother, and her counterpart, the maiden, and lastly the anima in man and the animus in woman. The
The shat. Wow, I really ruined that. The shadow is the parts of yourself that you. Oh my. Damn. The shadow is the parts of yourself that you don't express in your day-to-day life. The wise old man is like, think of Gandalf. Again, you can see all these archetypes you can see in storytelling. What makes a good story is its ability to capture universal archetypes. And even if they're subverting them, you also have the universal archetypes as well. It's like um, Frank Herbert's probably the best example of subverting a hero. But you have perfect heroes that are the the outcome's supposed to be one thing, but it in some way twisted. I'm not going to spoil the whole series of Dune, but even when a hero is subverted, it has to be a perfect hero, otherwise it's boring. Like what's George R. R. Martin's so boring because there's no philosophy, there's nothing to learn from it. All you learn is the world is evil, and it kind of gets stale at a certain point. They're great storytelling, but there's nothing else. There's no depth to it. It's just a story. You might as well just read history at that point in some sorts of ways. Your shadow was talking right there through the cough. Yeah. My shadow was telling me I was about to say something really fucking stupid, which I probably did. But the child, just think of like a child, like think of a child, the not the damsel not the damsel in distress, but like the child that needs to be saved or your inner like all sorts of ideas based off this. The mother, um, the maiden, think of Galadriel and the Lord of the Rings. The anima in man and the animus in woman. So the anima in man is essentially think about how your mother raised you. Think about the traits that she imparted on you. Your first interaction with a woman was with your mother, and it's vice versa with the woman and a man, the woman and her father. So essentially, like your relationships in the future are going to be based off of this archetype. And if you have a bad relationship with your mother, a bad relationship with your father, it's very difficult to have a good relationship because there's like a animosity there. There's like a need to fight against this part of your psyche. And the truth is like the real solution to facing your anima, facing your animus is to integrate those traits for yourself. So like for me, my relationships would fail in the past simply because like I was looking for someone to support me. I was looking for someone to like always have my back. And that's something my mother always did for me. But like at a certain point you have to realize that you embody these traits yourself. The traits that you're looking for in someone else is the traits that you have yourself. And when you don't give it to yourself first, you can't ask someone to give it to you in excess. So like if if my girlfriend was the only support system I had, she has her own bullshit to deal with. She has her own things that she's going through. So like I can't rely on her 24/7 to be like, "Oh, you can do this. Oh, you can do that. Oh, I believe in you. Oh, I know you're good enough." Like I need to say this to myself first. If she says it to me, great, awesome. I love that. But like I need to be my own support system. I need to be my own safety net. I need to be able to tell myself, it's okay you're not good enough right now. It's okay you messed up. It's okay you failed. It's okay you did this. It's okay you did that. Like I need to be easier on myself. And it's like once I just accepted that, everything changed and I was able to, I don't know, really be myself in a relationship. That now we're getting too deep and now we're getting too into my own personal life. So we'll keep going.
And lastly, the anima in man and the animus in woman. The archetypes are actualized when they enter consciousness and express themselves as images or certain behavior based on our interaction with the outside world. They are autonomous living personalities within us, that is, they are not within our control.
If you see someone that hates the opposite gender as well, this is what it is. They hate themselves. That's literally all it is. So somebody that's screaming, "Oh, women are bad," or "Oh, men are bad," like that's just the person that doesn't like themselves. Because it's all projection. Anything you push out on anybody else is something that you really feel about yourself. Like am I gonna call somebody like bald? Like it's really stupid. So once you realize that you're pushing out your own insecurity and you start recognizing like this is something I'm insulting people for, why don't I deal with my own issues first? Then you can start growing. But until you do something like that, it's always gonna be, oh, well, this person is this person is that. Like I just think it's like one of the dumbest things you could do because any attention that you put to people you don't like is your time, is your energy, is your only gift that you can ever get back. You know, giving someone your attention is the greatest gift you can give them because it's something that is fleeting. It's something that is becoming more valuable as you become older and older and older. And like think of how much time we spend on hate. Think of how much time we spend on things that we despise or people that we don't like. Like it's so ridiculous. And when you start thinking like this, it makes you reinvest that time and energy into people that really mean something to you, people that really matter to you. And I think that's really the way forward. It's not to I wish I could remember the part of the Bible that says this, but you don't get rid of evil in your life by projecting it. You get rid of evil in your life by rebuking it. You don't give it any power. You don't give it any attention. You don't give it any time. You completely ignore it. It doesn't even slip your mind because if it slips your mind, you're still giving it credence. You're still giving it some control over you.
But are rather given particular expression by individuals and their cultures. As Jung writes, my views about the archaic remnants, which I call archetypes or primordial images, have been constantly criticized by people who lack sufficient knowledge of the psychology of dreams.
Okay, like if you don't believe in archetypes, then you don't understand symbolism. Um, go into like wear a Trump hat in the wrong side of town that doesn't like Trump. You're telling me that's not a symbol that has power over people? You're telling me that with words and with a silly hat you can evoke that much out of someone's time and energy and they can vilely hate you that much. Like there's so much power in symbols and there's so much that we don't understand about symbols, yet people kind of try to deny this. It's very weird. I don't know. It's like in order to understand these ideas, this is something I've been saying a lot lately. Think of like there's really two types of people in this world that think. There's the creative people, then there's the analytical people. And the world is kind of ruled right now by the analytical people. It used to be more of a balance, but like think of the bean counters. Think of the people that all they do is just crunch the numbers. All they do is look at the last quarter's sales and results and all this stuff, and then they wonder why things don't succeed. It's because there's like a creative element, there's a human element, there's a psychological element, and those are the things that only creative people understand. And because the creative people can't talk to the analytical people, nothing gets done. But the real geniuses in this world can mix both. So like look at Tolkien. Tolkien was able to form like create an entire world that fits perfectly, that there's no plot holes, there's songs, there's mythos, there's a timeline, there's all this history. So like the analysis, the logic, the reason with a very deep mythos, with a very deep creative sense of the world feeling lived in. Like any great work of art is both analytical and creative. So it's like it's the combination, it's the genesis of these two ideas. that create anything meaningful. And it's the same thing to understand these symbols. You need to understand the concept of the symbols, and you need to understand the uniqueness of the symbols to the individual. And this is what Freud couldn't do. Freud was pure, what is it? Is it left brain? I always mix this up. Right brain is the creative brain. Left brain is the logical paralysis by analysis brain. And essentially, when you combine these two concepts, this is where really the genius, the magic of life comes out.
and of
A good example of this is Da Vinci. Da Vinci was able to study leaves and study how they fell so that he could perfectly paint them in his paintings. The attention to detail was what really allowed his paintings to stand the test of time and be held in such high regard today. Well, actually, the Mona Lisa was stolen, and that made it the most popular painting. But we're getting off topic.
mythology. The term archetype is often misunderstood as meaning certain definite mythological images or motifs, but these are nothing more than conscious representations. Such variable representations cannot be inherited. The archetype is a tendency to form such representations of a motif, representations that can vary a great deal in detail without losing their basic pattern. Archetypes are forms without content, representing merely the possibility of a certain type of perception and action. This is a crucial point, which
Just think about images. He made it way too complicated. Like, what do you see? What do you think about when you said see? What do you see or think about when you hear a hero? What do you see or think about when you hear like the American dream? What do you see or think about when you hear success? These are archetypal images that we kind of are guided by. You know, even the way you view other people is an archetypal image in essence, because you can never really see the person for who they really are. You can only observe them through your interactions with them, what you see about them, the way you perceive them. So even that is like a perfected image. So it's like it's very complex but very simple at the same time. Just think about them as images.
he reiterates. A primordial image is determined as to its content only when it has become conscious and is therefore filled out with the material of conscious experience. Archetypes guide us towards psychic wholeness through the individuation process, the path towards the self.
The individuation process, broadly speaking, is just integrating the parts of yourself that you don't otherwise allow to be expressed. So like for men, I think the biggest thing that men need to integrate today is creativity. Um, for women, I think it's like a capacity to not like how do I say this? Like there's a need to like reassure themselves. Like my sister's like, "Oh, I don't need no man." It's like you could fully believe that and not have to say it. The fact that you had to say it, like there's a you're trying to fool somebody, you're trying to fool yourself. And it's like it's such a weird thing to like try to describe someone. There's a great scene in Game of Thrones, I think it sums this up perfectly, but essentially the boy king is kept out of a meeting of the king's council, and essentially he's like, why why was I not invited to my own council meeting? I'm the king. And he says, his grandfather says, any man that has to say he's king is not a king. Anytime you have to say you're something, it's not true. Michael Jordan never had to say he was the greatest. People said it about him. And it's like it's very like just be it. Just be about it. You don't have to say it. You don't have to say you're strong, independent, this. You just be it. Just show it through your actions. There's like a very weird need to do that. I would say we need a more healthy polarity. Yeah, I would say so too, but you know, the thing about polarity is something people don't understand about polarity is everybody is a mix of polarity. So like you might be 80% masculine, you might be 20% feminine. You know what I mean? It's like it's nobody's 100% either way because you're a caveman if you're 100% either way. You need the push pull, you need the give take. You need the capacity to have emotion, the capacity to be analytical in order to have any sort of meaningful life. So it's like if you just accept that and accept that different people have different polarity, I think that's like there's like this weird need of like I don't know if you like I don't even know if I can explain this, but like think of like the masculine content that's like pushed out like I don't even know who does this kind of content anymore, but like you always see them like the gym guys that are like, oh, you need to be as aggressive and as high testosterone as possible, and you need to be in the like that's like the pursuit of 100% masculinity. And it's just like that'll just make you an idiot. Like You need balance. Any person that's on the extreme of anything is in a world of trouble, regardless of what it is. If you're an extreme in a political view, if you're an extreme in a religious view, if you're extreme in anything, it's bad. It's not good to put all your eggs in one basket. It's just a recipe for disaster, and it's a recipe for something terrible happening. And it's like once we start understanding that, once we started just accepting things, I think that's a lot of it. You know what I mean?
activating unconscious primordial images through exposure to unexplored potentials of the psyche, bringing them into consciousness. In the course of my investigations of the collective unconscious, I discovered the presence of an apparently universal symbol of a similar type, the mandala symbol. To make sure of my case, I spent more than a decade amassing additional data.
It's like a circle with symbols in it. Essentially, Jung would have his patients draw these symbols. I don't know if you can really see it. It's behind these words. I always said mandala, but it's a mandala, I guess. But essentially it's just these circles with these patterns, and they're something universal to every single culture, and they have their own interesting significance. And Jung believed it was therapeutic to like in some way draw these things, in some way craft these things. There's if you're interested in this idea, there's you could look up Jung's mandala drawings.
Before announcing any discovery for the first time. The mandala is an archetypal image whose occurrence is attested throughout the ages. It signifies the wholeness of the self.
So like this is something Pythagoras believed. This is one of the most interesting things I've ever studied. Essentially, Pythagoras believed that like rigid structures would in some way affect the mind and in some way change the health of the patient. So he would have sick people stare at different shapes, which honestly, it seems crazy, but then we like researched the placebo effect, and like there is so much with like I feel like people kind of dismiss it, like Christian Science or like those sorts of ideas. Like there's something to it. Now, how much we can debate. Now, how much that's, we really should study it because it's a fascinating phenomenon. And the more we understand it, the more we understand consciousness and humanity as a whole. But essentially, it's the mind doesn't like rigidity. The mind likes wholeness. The mind likes perfect shapes. It doesn't like squares. It doesn't like triangles. It doesn't like hexagons or any sort of rigidity like this. Like think of your mind as like the world as a whole. Like anytime you try to force something, it's going to be met with resistance, and it's the same thing with your head. Anytime you push something down, it's going to bubble up in another way. If I'm training jujitsu, like anytime I try to force a move, it's going to be a lot more difficult than if I set it up, than if I trick the person into coming into my trap. Like there's there's all sorts of universal truths that we need to start applying to these ideas because, you know, was Newton specifically talking about physics when he was talking about, an object in motion tends to stay in motion? Or was he talking about people? Think about when somebody's met with a drastic change and they have to make a huge life adjustment. Do they come easy or do they come kicking and screaming? For every action there's an equal but opposite reaction. Is that just not the world as a whole? Like, there's all sorts of these interesting ideas that are somewhat universal to all things, but I'm gonna have my girlfriend look at some shit when she's married. That is the best chat I've ever gotten. Dude, that's dude, Pythagoras is so interesting. I wish there was more like resources because everything he wrote, everything he kind of professed is like kind of lost to time. I'm pretty sure he was like assassinated. I'm pretty sure everything he did was burnt down. Um, so we really don't have much. We really just have accounts of other people. But that guy was like, we think of him like as like a mathematician, as a philosopher, but he's really a cult leader. He's like more like Epicurus than like a normal philosopher. Like he was a mystic if I've ever seen one.
Circular image represents the wholeness of the psychic ground, or, to put it in mythic terms, the divinity incarnate in man. From a psychological point of view, Jung saw the God image as a manifestation of the ground of the psyche, which takes the form of circular symbols of unity, representing a
So like this is where you kind of see Jung's Gnostic influence. Jung kind of believed that there was like one universal consciousness, not necessarily like a specific deity, which is it's interesting. It is. I don't know where I stand on it. I'm kind of back and forth sometimes. But
A synthesis of
yeah.
opposites within the psyche. The
If you want to understand this idea, read Spinoza's Ethics because it'll explain the monad perfectly. I'll be right back in a second. All right, I'm back. Oh, wow. Wow, we did not even. Oh, I guess we made it halfway in this video. It's a long video though. I feel like I'm doing a good job on time though. Normally it takes me like, dude, I've had streams where like it took me almost an hour to do like a 7 minute video. It was, those are obviously so fun because I'm like, I don't know, obviously I'm like riffing. I'm just going in on a random rant. But at the same time, like, I don't know. I feel like these videos are like so fun to like go through.
self is the archetype of orientation and meaning, and to have a balanced relation with it, one's conscious and
You can also understand the anima animus this way. So if this is, what is it? I think white is the masculine side. If this is the masculine, there's the feminine inside of it. This is the feminine, there's the masculine side of it.
unconscious personalities must have learned to live at peace and to complement one another. For Jung, the only real adventure remaining for each individual is the exploration of his own unconscious. Before Jung's discovery, psychology insisted on the personal nature of the psyche. It was a
So this is where Freud and Jung kind of split. Freud liked to give blanket terms. Jung liked to give. Jung believed the psyche was a complete world of its own for each different individual, whereas Freud wouldn't give that same definition.
psychology of the person, where the causes are regarded almost wholly as personal in nature. However, it is based on general biological factors, such as the sexual instinct or need for self-assertion, which are by no means merely personal peculiarities. They are a priori instincts common to man which pursue their inherent goals. Therefore, human activity is influenced to a high degree by instincts, quite apart from the rational motivations of the conscious mind. Modern psychotherapy is faced with the task of helping the patient to become conscious of them. Jung believes that the archetypes are the unconscious images of the instincts themselves. In other words, archetypes are patterns of instinctual behavior. The hypothesis of the collective unconscious is therefore no more daring than to assume there are instincts. While many have called this
I feel like he's going into too much detail here. I feel like I don't know, because like I think the profoundness kind of speaks for itself. Like we've kind of gone through that. It's just you can choose to describe this in whatever way you want, but there are universal symbols. There are things we all understand that we can't explain, that we can't pinpoint the influence, that we just know. It's like, what is this influence? How is it affecting us? And how does it affect us for good and how does it affect us for bad? And how do we deal with it in the best way we can? And I think to deny the collective unconscious in any regard is just idiotic. I don't think you can if you have a understanding of human beings and understanding of how human beings see the world. But you know, we have idiots around us, so
mysticism, Jung's concept of the collective unconscious is neither a speculative nor a philosophical matter, but an empirical one. The question is, are there or are there not unconscious universal forms of this kind? If they exist, then there is a region of the psyche which one can call the collective unconscious. If we consider the tremendous powers that lie hidden in the mythological and religious sphere in man, the etiological significance of the archetype appears less fantastic. In numerous cases of neurosis, the cause of the disturbance lies in the very fact that the psychic life of the patient lacks the cooperation of these forces. A purely personalistic psychology, by reducing everything to personal causes, tries its best to deny the existence.
Okay, so what he's saying is everything's being tied to the individual and their experience, and it's neglecting the universal experience. It's neglecting the relationship to the society, the relationship to the ideas of a successful person, the ideas of a good Christian, the ideas of a good American. Like think of how we have to balance our own individual goals, our own individual interest with the want of our parents, with the want of society, with what we perceive to be successful, we perceive for a meaningful and a purposeful life. Like this is really what he's talking about.
Of archetypal motifs and even seeks to destroy them by personal analysis. Jung considers this a rather dangerous procedure which cannot be justified medically. The fate of great nations is a summation of psychic changes in individuals. Neuroses are in most cases not just private concerns, but social phenomena, which are influenced by the archetypes. But how can we prove the existence of a collective unconscious? Jung tells us that the main source is dreams, which have the advantage of being involuntary, spontaneous.
So what he's about to say is there's recurring symbols in dreams that we all kind of see. So think of like the Hat Man. I haven't done enough research to know what it is, but everyone sees him. Um, I might see him tonight. Ooh. I haven't had a bad dream in a very long time, so I welcome it.
Products of the unconscious psyche, and are therefore pure products of nature, not falsified by any conscious purpose. An individual can experience motifs appearing in his dreams that are known to him, but also motifs which could not possibly be known to the dreamer, and yet behave functionally in his dream in such a manner as to coincide with the functioning of the archetype. Jung's visit to the primitive people of Africa informed him on the subject of dreams and the difference between.
He went to tribes. This guy's not saying so. That's such a funny way to phrase it. He visited tribes and saw that they had the same symbols as the civilized world, essentially.
What he calls big dreams and little dreams. This has to do
Big dreams are like events you remember forever. So like I'm sure we all have one or two dreams that we'll always remember. Little dreams are like the weird ones that we just forget. And like essentially like a big dream is like a Jungian synchronicity in the sense that it signals a turning point. There's supposed to be some epiphany. There's supposed to be something that you eventually grasp from it. I guess I haven't explained synchronicities, but that's something to
whether
think.
the dream comes from the collective unconscious or whether it was from the personal unconscious. Another way to experience the archetypes is through active imagination, a sequence of fantasies
I
produced
wouldn't do
by
this.
deliberate concentration.
Okay. Active imagination like blurs the lines of sanity and insanity, and I really wouldn't recommend this for the majority of people because I think a lot of people are not going to use it in an efficient way. Just once you get good at dream analysis, you could start exploring this idea, but I would push this off until you're more experienced with your psyche, you're more experienced with your mind.
Jung found that the existence of unrealized unconscious fantasies increases the frequency and intensity of dreams, and that when these fantasies are made conscious, the dreams change their character and become weaker and less frequent. From this, he has drawn the conclusion that dreams often contain fantasies which want to become conscious. The sources of dreams are often
So, active imagination, the easiest way to describe it is you're dreaming but you're not sleeping. Like you're in a daydream. It's all the same. It's the same as a daydream, but you're not daydreaming about anything that makes any sense. You're in tap with your unconscious. You're in tap with your more symbolic side of your mind. I don't know if that explained it at
repressed
all.
instincts which have a natural tendency to influence the conscious mind. In active imagination, the patient is simply given the task of contemplating any one fragment of fantasy that seems significant to him, or something he has become conscious of in a dream, elaborating the fantasy by observing the further fantasy material that adds itself to the fragment in a natural manner. The
You're probably also not gonna be able to do this if you can't meditate. I don't know if you can without. being able to meditate and focus.
Method, however, is not
I,
entirely
I've been
without
waiting. Where
danger
you been,
because it may carry the patient too far away from reality.
dude?
Close confrontation
I was watching football the other day, the real football, American football, and it was the first game of the season, and there was an ad for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Hutta was on it. I'm like, how do I know who this person is? And then I saw the name, and I'm like, worlds are colliding. It was so weird.
with the unconscious brought about a period of inner uncertainty and disorientation. He felt that he needed a point of support in this world, which his family and work provided him. The unconscious content would otherwise have made him lose his wits. At the same time, these years of pursuing his inner images were the most important in Jung's life, providing him
He's talking about the Red Book right now. The Red Book is something is very difficult to understand, and it's not really worth it to study unless you really studied Jung a lot. It's something that I would push off. You just say real football, dude. I mean, okay. I don't know. I feel like I would like watching soccer, but there's just so many games. That's the problem with it. Like to me, it's like too difficult to keep track of everything, and plus there's like a million leagues. So it's like, which one do I watch? Do I watch them all or just stick to one? And like, it's not like I could go to a good game here. Like the MLS is terrible. Well, I guess I mean, they're professional soccer players, but like, it's not like, it's not like you're watching like Man City or Man United. I don't know even what team is good anymore, but you're gonna turn off notifications and go get some shames. Honestly, fair. That'll fix your psyche more than I ever could. She's a ve she's very influential, an American icon. Is she American? I thought Love Island was like British people.
with invaluable insights for his life's work. Philemon and other figures of my fantasies brought home to me the crucial insight that there are things in the psyche which I do not produce, but which produce
All right, this is just going on about. All right, I think that was a pretty good video. The end is just going into the weeds of like active imagination, which I don't think is that useful to talk about. Um, we will watch this video about Taoism, philosophy of flow. This is by I don't. Oh, I'm gonna get made fun of for trying to say this. Is Einzig. I'm not even gonna try to say it. This is a good channel. I've reacted to it several times. I don't know why I'm not subscribed. Go check out their stuff. I can't say their name.
overcomes the hardest substances. That which offers no resistance can enter where there is no space.
That which offers no resistance overcomes the hardest substances. That which offers no resistance can enter where there's no space. So it's talking about like if you want to understand Taoism, you have to understand paradoxes. You have to understand how like something can be nothing and nothing can be something. I don't know. I like they're diametrically opposed ideas, but like think of a nihilist, they still believe in nihilism. So even though they don't believe in anything, technically they believe in something. That's like the easiest way to describe things. Like if we're describing nothing, it's still something. That's essentially this idea.
Few in the world can comprehend the teaching without words or understand the value of non-action.
When it says non-action, it's not. I don't like because I think non-action is not a good definition. What it's really talking about is we're 15 seconds in and I'm about to go on a rant. Think of when you do something and you lose yourself in it. So like we've all had that game where we started doing something, we just lost ourselves, where things just happen and we weren't thinking. It just occurred. If you've ever been creatively inspired, you just write and it just comes out. Um, that sort of idea. It's just, when you do your laundry, you don't notice and it's 30 minutes late. Like it's just losing yourself in what you're doing and not thinking about it. The moment you start thinking about something is the moment you take yourself out of the moment.
Lao Tzu. There's no proof that he truly ever lived, but if he did, it should have been somewhere around the 5th and 6th century BC, which makes him a contemporary of Confucius. Nevertheless, the
Taoists make fun of Confucius because of how rigid he is and how his philosophy is contradictory in several different points.
Chinese philosopher Lao
A lot of their like parables, they use Confucius as the guy that they're making fun of.
Tzu wrote a masterpiece called the Tao Te Ching, which is the main work of Taoism.
It's like
A
40
well-known
pages long.
concept that has emerged
It's
from
well
Taoist
worth reading.
philosophy is Wu Wei, that can be translated as non-action, effortless action, or the paradoxical action of non-action. In a practical sense, we can describe Wu Wei as the state of flow, often referred to as the zone by
Just not resisting, allowing things to happen as they happen, essentially.
athletes. When athletes
I was going to use the athlete example. The athlete example is a good one, but think about like you're fishing and you're just fishing. You don't check your phone. You're not thinking about the world. You're not thinking about anything else except what you're doing. Think about your happiest moment. Was it when you won something big, or was it when you were sitting around the table with your friends and you were just enjoying things and your life didn't matter, the past didn't matter, the future didn't matter? That's Wu Wei.
are in the zone, they engage in action without striving and move through time and space almost effortlessly. There are no extremes, no worries, no ruminations. Everything seems to flow in a natural course. As an introduction to the beautiful tradition of Taoism, I would like to present you the philosophy of flow. The Tao Te Ching is a mysterious piece of art. Not only there's no consensus when exactly it was
No one knows who really wrote it. It's I think it's like people say it's like 2,500 years old. I think you can say that and it's fairly accurate. It's interesting because it's so short, but every single sentence of this work has been analyzed so many times that like there's libraries full of interpretations. And this is something like there's no such thing as a Taoist temple. There's no such thing as a Taoist church. You know, it's like almost nomadic in that sense. It's almost like you follow your own path. Whereas like Buddhism kind of became like following the studies of Buddha, trying to become the next Buddha, trying to interpret his teachings, and like Taoist basically has no idols. I think the easiest way to think about it is so there's Zen Buddhism, and Zen Buddhism is Taoism and Buddhism combined, essentially. Um, and really what it preaches is if you see Buddha in the road, kill him. It's one of the funniest phrases ever. But really what it's saying is don't have any idols. Find your own path, find your own way, find your own peace. Don't try to be like anyone else because it's inauthentic and you're missing the point.
written, but the existence of its author remains disputed. Nevertheless, one thing is certain: the profundity of this work has left its mark on humanity to this day. Not to mention that the Tao Te Ching is the most translated work in world literature after the Bible. The essence of Taoist philosophy is living in harmony with the Tao, also called the Way. So, what is the Tao? That's a question we can't really answer, and it's few.
When it says the way, think of like the order of things. And now it's not clear if it's chaos. It's not clear if it's things occur for a reason, but they just occur. And I think that's a lot of the point is it's just you're supposed to accept it. You're just supposed to allow them to happen and then roll with the punches, go with the flow, for lack of better words.
Futile to try. Our understanding of the Tao only goes as far as the limitations of our perception. What the Tao really is, and what it looks, feels, smells, or sounds like, remains a mystery. Moreover, the Tao that we speak of isn't the real Tao, according to Lao Tzu. Hence, the famous opening.
So he's saying something extremely deep here. So the phrase, roughly speaking, is the Tao the written Tao is not the real Tao. Basically saying that when you define something, there is stuff lost in translation. So like you call someone a mean word, that person's an idiot. Maybe they're an idiot, but maybe they're just misinformed on this issue, and you're missing that there's a bigger picture of things. Essentially, that's what it's saying.
of the Tao Te Ching goes like this. The Tao that can be described is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be spoken is not the eternal name. End quote.
So like we're giving a definition to something that can't be described. Is in essence what
The
he's
name
saying.
that can be spoken is not the eternal name. End quote. So, what knowledge is available about the Tao? Well, the Taoist philosophers emphasize over and over again that the true Tao is an all encompassing force that is beyond our comprehension and cannot be perceived by the senses. And even though we can never grasp the true Tao, the goal is to live in agreement with it, which is strikingly similar to the Stoic approach to nature. So, how do we live in
What's
harmony
up,
with the
RP? How's
way?
everything?
Taoist literature doesn't really give one practical method to achieve this. However, we can find many clues that point to achieving stillness of mind, curbing the senses, being humble, and the cessation of strife.
When it says the Tao and when it says nature, it's your nature. Okay, it's like what do you do that you don't think about? What are the activities you lose yourself in? What would you want to do in this very moment and then you do it? That's really what it's talking about. And that's really what a Taoist enlightenment is. Now there's different ideas of enlightenment, but essentially it's just if you live in accordance with the Tao, you're enlightened. That's really it's almost like a manual to find yourself. And it's like a set of paradoxes that are philosophical, that are poetic, that kind of are meant to inspire you to lose the facade that you carry with yourself, lose the fake persona that you push out into the world, and just break it down to the bare bones of what do you need to be happy. Um, there's a lot of carryover with the Gita. There's a lot of carryover with Emerson. There's a lot of carryover with Walden. I think if you read any of these books, you can kind of see the same similar parts to it. I think it's very interesting to compare these ideas and kind of see a common thread.
Striving in order to open ourselves up to the workings of the universe. This stillness of mind doesn't necessarily mean that we sit down somewhere with our eyes closed. The Taoists observe that stillness of mind can be combined with action, and if we are completely in the present moment, our actions will go effortlessly, without friction, and accompanied by a razor-sharp focus. So much so that it's almost ecstatic. In his biography, retired professional basketball player Bill Russell writes, "It was almost as if we were playing in slow motion. During those spells, I could almost sense how the next play would develop and where the next shot would be taken."
I'm sure we've all felt this at some point in our life. I'm sure we all took a shot that we knew was going to go in. We did something and we knew that what was going to happen. It just things lined up so perfectly. And it's essentially like that moment at all times of your life is the purpose of Taoism, to find that, to live in that, to be in that state all time, all day long.
End quote. The Taoist work Jung contains a story about a cook named Ting, who engages in his work while in a state of flow. This grasped the attention of Lord Wen Hui, who was amazed about how elegantly the cook cut up oxen. When he commented him on his skill, Cook Ting laid down his knife and replied, "What I care about is the way, which goes beyond skill. When I first began cutting up oxen, all I could see was the ox itself. After 3 years, I no longer saw the whole ox, and now I go at it by spirit, and don't look with my eyes. Perception and understanding have come to stop, and spirit moves where it wants. I go along with the natural makeup, strike in the big hollows, guide the knife through the big openings, and following things as they are. So I never touch the smallest ligament or tendon, much less."
Okay, so he's talking about like a level of proficiency that masters have. So like a great story of this state of flow is the Zen painters. So essentially, they would paint on rice paper, and if you look up Zen paintings, you'll see magnificent works. I don't know why I can't speak, but essentially, if you stop at any moment, if you are in any moment forcing the brush strokes, it ruins the entire painting. So in order to, damn, why am I coughing? So in order to paint on these rice paper surfaces, what they do is they learn everything about painting for 12 years, and then they stop painting for 12 years. And when they come back, they have the mechanics, but they don't have the rushed nature to it. They don't have the need to do this or the need to do that. They have found their style through other things, and they are able to perform the techniques of the brushstrokes without thinking about it. And that's really the key to life. The more you think about life, the worse it becomes. Like I really hate to say it that way, but it's the truth. Seneca has a way of saying this. It's we suffer more in our own minds than we do in reality. Think of any problem you've ever had. Has it ever made it better by worrying about it? Has it ever made it better by stressing about it? Has it ever made it worse by, or of course it's made it worse, but has it ever made it better by thinking of all the scenarios that could happen, think of everything that could go wrong? Or would you be much better off just actually working on the problem, forgetting about it? That's really what this idea is talking about.
A main joint. End quote. An essential part of this story is the condition of the knife that the cook uses. He stated that good cooks change their knives every year because they cut, and mediocre cooks change their knives every month because they hack. Cook Ting, however, was using the same knife for 19 years because he used it with skill and subtlety. This story connects to another essential teaching of Taoism, which is the power of gentleness. By forcing and striving, we might get the job done. But at the same time, we spend much more energy than necessary and possibly suffer from collateral damage. On the other hand, some
Think of like the phrase "think harder, not smarter," or "think smarter, not harder," or "work smarter, not harder." I can't remember the exact saying, but it's all the same. Like, have you ever put your nose down to a project and really, 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 really just put it all out and it didn't come out the way you wanted? And then you've had other things where you just really just thought about it. You really were like, okay, if I just do it this way, if I just, really apply my more creative faculties to it, I can find a way that is not as work intensive. And it was just so much easier. It came out so much better. Essentially, we're doing the first thing with our everyday lives. Every decision we make is built off of stress, is built off of thinking, is built off of worry. And because of that, we're rushing everything we do. But when we slow it down, when we're in the moment, when we're allowing ourselves to be more open to ideas and more open to the creative solution, that's really where we find the ideas that set ourselves apart from others. I hate to say it that way, but like it's really the truth. You think of the people that disrupted industries, Tesla, Edison, Einstein, um, Steve Jobs, like the people that defied what our preconceived notions of things were, those were people that thought creatively. Those were not people that thought analytically. And you can only think analytically if you are in this world of, I have to do this by this day. I have to do this by this day. I have to really work hard. I have to force this. I have to just get this done. I have to put my head like, you're never going to solve a problem in an interesting way if you do it that way. But when you solve a problem in an interesting way, then you have an interesting solution that can, in some way, benefit the world in a way that's never been seen before.
someone in a state of flow approaches a task intelligently, knowing when to act and when not to, and finds a balance between action and non-action. It's a matter of not too hot, not too cold. It's the golden path between anxiety and boredom. The idea behind non-action goes against the Western ideal of forcing and working harder and harder to get.
Think about like if you've ever been at work and you finished all your work and then you check your emails or you go do something to just seem busy for the sake of seeming busy. And it's like, wouldn't it benefit you more to relax? Wouldn't it benefit you more to, maybe ask your boss for another job to do or just wait around and rest your brain so that you're fresh for the next thing that is springing up? But instead, we feel this constant need to do this constant need to do this or this or this or this or this. Like, I used to be so like, I wouldn't even call it accountable, but it was like it got to the point where like if I didn't do everything on my task list for the day, like I would be very angry at myself. And it's like, is that really worthwhile? Am I really doing something productive, or am I taking the fun out of all my passions? Like I was so concerned about the checklist that I was neglecting the things that were really interesting to me, the things that were really driving me, the things that I really found fun. It took the fun out of it. Like you can always take the fun out of things when you think about them, but if you just do them and just act, that's really where the magic happens.
Results. We are encouraged to be ambitious, to take control, and to strive. Meanwhile, many people suffer from depression, anxiety disorders, and sleep disorders. Are we burning ourselves out? We look down on passivity and often mistake it for laziness. But these are different things. When we look at nature, doing nothing makes way more sense than we tend to think. Results do not equal the amount of energy we spend. Results are the consequence of a series of actions. The funny thing about this is that many of these actions come naturally, and the task doesn't need more human intervention than necessary to steer it into the right direction. Isn't it so that many problems solve themselves?
Think of this is something Eckhart Tolle said. 90% of your problems are not real. 90% of your problems resolve themselves. Like, how many times have you been kept up at night worrying about something you said and then the person just forgave you or the person forgot or, really wasn't that like I can point to countless examples of me worrying about something that in the grand scheme of things, I don't even remember. Like think about all the high school drama you had that you're like, this is the end of the world. Oh, I'll never be friends with this person again. And you don't even remember what it was about. It doesn't matter to you. Now that's essentially what a lot of our problems are. It's just things happen and we just refuse to accept them. We refuse to move on and we worry about them and we make them a whole lot worse than they need to be.
Taoism compares life to a river. The river already has a course, or several courses, and once we find ourselves in that river, we can swim against the current, we can hold on to a branch, or we can let go and go along with the stream. Most of our lives, we swim against the current, and we don't even realize it. Our mind believes that it can and should control the environment in order to survive.
There is what would you even call it? An aphorism by Heraclitus or Heraclides. I don't know how to say it. I really need to like look up how to say these words before I say them. Heraclitus basically said, "You never step in the same river twice," meaning that you've changed and the river has changed. Everything is in flow, everything is in flux, and it's just our ability to accept that determines our lives and determines what our lives will be. And you can always fight to cling on to something, but you can never recreate it. And we have a whole lot of people that are clinging on to the past, a whole lot of people that are clinging on to a hope of the future instead of just living. And when you just live, when you just experience life, when you just do things for the sake of doing them, do things because you want to do them, that's really where your happiness is. It's not, oh, I'll be happy when I have this mansion. Oh, I'll be happy when I have this house. Oh, well, in 5 years I'll be this. In 5 years I'll be successful. Like it's fine. It's fine to have goals. It's fine to aim upward. But when you base everything off of a future event, then you're saying to yourself, you're not happy now. It's the same thing with the past. When you base everything off your past accomplishments, you're telling yourself life isn't as good now. Think about all of like the retired athletes that kind of can't move on and now they're like sportscasters and they always just bring up the good old days. They're like, oh, my playing days. And it's just like you could see that person's dying on the inside because they want to be playing and they haven't been able to accept their new role in life. They haven't been able to accept that the glory day the glory days are gone and they will never be able to do that again. It's like I don't know, there's very few players that like have exemplified that level of maturity in my mind, but I feel like it's a issue for another day. But yeah.
Which is kind of egocentric, because the vast majority of processes within as well as outside ourselves are not in our control. I mean, let's face it, we don't control our bodily processes like digestion, blood flow, or the healing of wounds. We don't control other people. We don't control the future. We don't even control who we fall in love with and what people we find attractive. Everything outside our own faculties just goes into some direction, sometimes forced by intelligence, but mostly in a natural course. When we flow along with the current, we align ourselves with this natural course. This is the path of least resistance. It gives nature a chance to unfold without us resisting it.
Going with the flow is not necessarily like I think it's just acceptance. Think about it as acceptance. That what happened has happened and I'm gonna deal with it now. That's really the only way you can face things. That's really the only way that you can move forward. There's gonna be a day and age where something terrible happens and you're gonna have to face it. There's gonna be a day and age where something great happens and you're gonna have to face it. There's this Sufi proverb. I guess we'll call it a proverb. Sufi allegory, Sufi story, whatever you want to call it. It's a story. And essentially the king goes to this wise man and he's like, find me something that'll make a happy man sad and a sad man happy. And he brings him a ring. And the ring says, this too shall pass. And essentially it's don't get too high on the highs, don't get too low on the lows, because everything is in flux, everything's changing. And you just have to accept this lot you've been given. That's really what Taoism is. That's the concept he's explaining right now.
So, the Taoist way is rather navigating through the river instead of trying to control it, something that will never work. Another aspect of the river that characterizes Taoism is the water itself. The characteristics of water are softness and humility that basically symbolize Taoist virtue. Here's a quote from the Tao Te Ching. The supreme good is like water, which benefits all of creation without trying to compete with it. It gathers in unpopular places, thus it is like the Tao. End quote. Water.
Think of the Bruce Lee quote, be like water, adapt to the situation, flow to the easiest. Like, think of there's almost like this like symbolic philosophical depth to the properties of water.
Water may be soft, but it overcomes hardness, which we can see in the erosion of rock. And water not only seeks the lower places, it also has no purpose, no goal, no specific
Be
desire,
what you
yet
need to
it
be for
nourishes
the
everything that it
situation.
passes. It's an incredible life force that literally does God's work, but without any ambition. Water is the softest and most yielding substance. Yet nothing is better than water for overcoming the hard and rigid, because nothing can compete with it. End quote. If you've ever experienced a state of flow,
Damn, I do not remember that at all. That's such a great way of putting it.
there's one thing that disappears and only comes back when the thinking mind takes back control. This is the focus on results, rather than the task at hand. This reminds me of the Stoic concept of amor fati, which recommends one to embrace the outcome.
So more Fati a Stoic? I thought that was Nietzsche. I could have swore that was Nietzsche. Damn. I've been quoting Nietzsche for that all. I'm gonna have
Whatever
to
it
look
may
that up.
be, and instead of worrying about the future, focusing on what's in the present. No matter if you're completely immersed in sports, writing, a video game, or dancing, when you're in a state of flow,
It
you forget the
is a
results,
Stoic.
the pressure, the anxieties
Damn,
about
I've
the
been
future,
attributing
the
that to
failings
Nietzsche.
of the past. It's just you and the task at hand. You are completely in the present,
Okay.
and the only way to do this is
Yeah,
by letting
Marcus
go.
Marcus
Letting
Aurelius said it, and then Nietzsche repeated it.
go
That's
means
why I thought
stop
it was him.
swimming against the current. Stop holding on to some branches. It means letting go of the past, letting go of the future. Focus on this moment entirely and just live it without hesitation. Thank you for watching.
Okay, I think that is a good place to stop. I feel my voice like kind of giving out a little bit. And my neck is killing me. Just from I don't like this chair. I gotta get a new chair that's more comfortable. But if you guys were here, thank you guys for being here for an awesome stream. It's a very fun time. I'm gonna stream again tomorrow. Not sure what time exactly, but hopefully you guys make it there. Love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one.